Finance Committee. I welcome all of you who have chosen to attend. We're very pleased with that. My name is Dick Rhodes, and I'm the chairman of the committee. And we're going to call the meeting to order. We have established a quorum, so we actually have all of our Budget and Finance Committee members that are present in the room. I'd like to present the minutes from September 13th, 2022, the Budget and Finance Committee members. Are there any changes or deletions to that? If not, so approved, consensus, it's approved. We're going to first start off with a staff report from Mr. Finelli. He's going to present our July and August financial and capital reports.
Well, thank you very much, Dick. Good morning, committee members and members of the audience. Today we are presenting the 2 months of July and August 2022. This represents the first 2 months of the fiscal year 22-23 fiscal year. As we've stated previously, the financial package is attached and presented for committee member review. However, due to the small font of the reports on the large screen, we extract the information into a presentation format. And also the amounts can be large, and as such, they can easily fill up a PowerPoint slide, so we put the information into millions. I will only be presenting on the year-to-date information. The operating portion of the income statement represents operating revenues and expenses. Overall operating revenues have begun the year in a favorable situation, exceeding the budget by about $70,000. About $60,000 of this resides within golf greens fees, due mostly to a slight excess in the rounds played. Also of good note, there are no deficits in any of the revenue categories to date. Moving to expenses, overall expenses are favorable to budget by about $160,000. $130,000 of that resides within wages, benefits, and payroll taxes. This occurred due to several reasons. First item was an unplanned extended closure of the Beardsley Rec Center due to supply chain issues, but also there is a higher amount of unfilled openings for the first 2 months versus budget. Long term, however, checked with our HR in August, had a very successful hiring month with 16 new hires versus 5 departures. So it's anticipated that wage savings should likely to decrease in future months. Also negative within the expenses was supplies. Price increases in chemicals, fertilizers, and oil and gas has certainly not abated. So the overall operating budget is favorable by about $233,000 through the first 2 months. I will say this surplus will likely be needed in future months, however, as we are likely to be negatively impacted by our higher than budgeted increase in health insurance come January 1. And also on January 1, we received notice the minimum wage increase of over 8% will also be higher than budgeted. So we definitely appreciate being in a surplus situation at this time. Moving to against prior year, revenues are pretty much flat. Operating expenses, they're up by about $420,000. This occurred in 2 primary areas, wages and benefits, due to a competitive wage adjustment made in July, which has resulted in the favorable hiring I just mentioned in August, but also increasing insurance costs. Also in another category, landscape maintenance, I mentioned earlier the chemical and fertilizer costs are extremely high lately. Moving to the capital-related portion of the income statement, year-to-date, we are right on budget on APFs. Would note, however, that while I'm not presenting September's information, there is starting to present some weakness in the housing sales, and due to the higher interest rates, presumably home prices, etc. Moving back to the results on the board, there is 110 negative in unrealized loss within the reserve funds. So overall, the capital-related component versus budget is about 120,000 behind budget year to date. Against prior year, the APF revenues are down about 70,000. Last year was off the charts high, so this was somewhat to be expected. In the prior year, there was also a favorable unrealized gain of about 240,000 through August. So coupled with the decline in the current year of about 110,000, that's a negative variance of 350,000. Overall, therefore, the capital-related portion is down about 400,000 versus prior year. Most of this, as I mentioned, is due to a lower number of transactions in the APF. I would note that this decline was partially abated by an increase in the APF rate. And the decline of 350,000 in the reserve funds represents about a 1% valuation change year over year. So pulling all the capital-related and operating together, for against budget, the operating income favorable, and the negative capital-related results in favorable budget of about 110,000 year to date. Against prior year, both sections are down, and the result is about 790,000 down from the same period prior year. Moving to the capital spend portion, governing board approved $10.8 million for the fiscal year 23. We've only had a few items be completed, paid, and closed. So to date, we do show a favorable savings of about 37,000. On the next slide, it's going to show my projection of the capital spend versus those budgeted items, resulted in right now a projected savings of a year end of about 5,000. Just want to remind everybody, there's a ton of things still not closed. This number most assuredly will change as the year progresses. This is a new item I'm presenting this year. I'm not going to go line by line on this, but you can see in the first column there are favorable items and negative items throughout the capital spend. On the third page, you can see we've issued about 10.1 million of the 10.8 million approved. So there is a limited amount where the result can be wildly influenced, but I guess, again, anything is possible. Just yesterday, for example, we saw the governing board was asked to address the soil stabilization issue at the R.H. Johnson parking lot, resulting in a facts and finding request, additional capital spend of about 75,000, and that was approved. Another section of the capital spend is our allowances. There's been about 28,000 issued to date of the 400,000. We post all these items each month online within the capital tracker, but in my 3 years here, I seem to often get asked what the allowance money was spent on. So I created the next line within the showing the detail. ARC and Lizard Acres both had damage to their equipment. The admin building was being recarpeted and repainted recently, so a number of outdated pieces of the office equipment was replaced. And finally, the CCNR office had a $1,000 change order, and that project is now complete. So that's my presentation, dude. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Okay. At our last meeting on September the 13th, we had Mr. Bagnato had a question in a spreadsheet, and we weren't in a position where we could present it. So we have been able to do that, and we want to pick up where we left off on the 13th of September. So if we could present that. Is that up? Oh, it's up.
Yes.
Excuse me. So, Frank, you started to present this, and we couldn't. So if you would pick up where you left off, or where we left off, and you have an opportunity now to talk about this.
Very good, thank you, Dick. I put together a spreadsheet based on budgeted numbers versus actual numbers. The actual numbers are not audited yet. They came from the very same financial statements that we saw earlier today. And according to my calculations, and Cliff Swan did indicate to me that what I did is correct, the budgeted amount of money that net cash available, you can see at the bottom line of the first column, was roughly $598,000. That was coming from a budget that was approved, it was board reviewed, and it also covered all the capital expenditures that went on during the fiscal year that ended June 30th. As I suspect many people in the audience know, in the words of the rec center themselves, 2022 resulted in a huge windfall, okay, for various reasons, and you'd have to dig into the financial statements, but again, the figures are correct. And so instead of just $598,000 in available cash, they ended up with nearly 8 times that amount, $5.244 million, or $5,244,348, a variance of $4.646 million. You can see those at the bottom of the page. My issue with this is that while it's wonderful news for the community, at the end of the day, that money came from the residents. And I do not believe for a second that we are either taxpayers or customers. We are owner members. And I think that it would only be reasonable that if it's required to change the policy, that some of that money be returned to the residents in the form of a dues credit. The excess revenue came from many different sources. As an example, the revenue from golf alone was $1 million more than what was budgeted. And that's great news, it really is. But I think that as owner members, we need to share in that great news. I did not include in this spreadsheet, I believe it was $4.8 million in unrecognized losses in our reserve account. And yes, that is correct. I believe the number, Cliff will probably confirm that at some point. But an unrealized loss is not a cash transaction. It's strictly a balance sheet transaction. And while it may lower the amount of money that is in reserves, it doesn't change any of these bottom line figures, okay? That's my position, and so I believe that Cliff may have some commentary on that.
Well, before we do that, excuse me, thank you, Frank. Before we do that, this is still a committee discussion. So I want to start in the committee and to see what your position are, if you have questions, or comments or anything. And David, I'd like to start with you.
At this time, I really don't have anything. I guess my reaction to this is mixed. I'm glad that the community had such a windfall. I look at this from the perspective of the reserve fund. And again, the reserve fund has a range of 40 to 70%. We're going through hard times now, and I'm of the opinion that I would rather have the reserve fund be closer to 70% than 40%. And frankly, I thought the community made a mistake when we moved away from the range we had and went to the 40% thing. So given where we're at right now, I know people are experiencing a lot of inflation, but personally, I wouldn't support returning dues back to the community. I would rather have it in a reserve fund because I don't know how long the bad times are going to last. And I'd rather have that money in our pocket right now to fix the community. I think there was a number that I heard thrown around of giving everybody back like $80. And maybe $80 is a lot of money to some people that live in the community, and I could understand that. But it's $80. And I just don't think that's going to have a truly substantive impact on anybody. So I would rather have the money stay in the coffers of the community so that we can deal with whatever the next thing may be, which is an increase in grass seed prices, or we have another situation like we did with the metal shop where we had to shut stuff down and then spend a lot of money to fix a condition that probably should have never been allowed to happen in the first place. So I appreciate the effort that Frank went to put these numbers out here, but I just don't see the justification for doing a dues reimbursement to the community.
Okay. Gary?
This committee spent a lot of time last year pushing the administration to take action to properly staff all the facilities and maintain them. What we were paying people was criminal. At Trail Ridge Men's Club, for example, the course last year went through the summer, not this past year, but the year before, with 3 maintenance people. 12 or 14 is the number that they should have. We'd hire people, they'd quit the next day. We were trying to hire people at $13.25 an hour. But that's just the beginning. The 60% of the community's expenses are in payroll and benefits. If we don't take care of our people, they're not going to take care of you. And we all have come to expect a high level of service in the community, and we're only going to maintain that by keeping the organization full and not be constantly turning over people. Any of you that have been in business know that when you hire someone and put them on the payroll, there's a period of time before they become productive. People who have been here quite some time carry the load. And when those people that just got hired leave, they wind up doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people. The expenses all the way down the line, gasoline, fertilizer, seed, all those sorts of things that if you'd sat through these meetings like we did last year, you'd have said, holy crap, where are we going to get the money to pay for all this stuff? It's just amazing what the operations people have done to maintain the performance that they have. I agree with David that the rainy day fund, so to speak, should be at the maximum level possible because you never know what's going to happen. And I predicted last year, we're not going to sell as many houses this year, and I'd be very surprised if we do 325,000 rounds of golf again. Things are just really, really tough out there, and you all know that. So the last thing we want to do is compromise the standards in this community. You're here, and we love it because of the standards that have been maintained over the years. And if we let those slip at all, you're going to see a tremendous drop in resident satisfaction, and that leads to bad publicity, and that leads to open houses.
I would have to agree with both David and Gary. So I'm not going to reiterate what they've said, other than I think they've summed up the position that I would take very nicely and given us substantial reason why we should put that money in the reserve and also put it, some of it to increasing our staff.
Thank you, President Dick, or Chairman Dick. I would have to endorse what the 3 people before me have said, and I will tell you that I chaired the Budget and Finance Committee the last 2 years. I've also been a board member who voted on this budget. Budgets are your best guesstimate of what will happen with the knowledge you have at the time you prepare it. That knowledge is never accurate. It's not accurate. It's always off in one way, shape, or form. But we're a conservative community, and we have been, as I understand it, from day one. We need to have our reserves. We have some major projects coming up that are mandated by the Arizona Division of Water Resources. We've already seen what we expected to pay for the Grandview project go up tremendously. That's not the only thing that's going to go up. But as we look ahead, projecting out what these reserves may be, they're going to be dipping. If we had a better year than we anticipated last year, I think we better say thanks to the powers that be that we had it. and hope that we don't have a year that goes the other way, because that could happen just as easily. Every one of us who bought in here signed an agreement to pay our dues. We had expectations of the high quality that we receive, and I want to see that continue. Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to congratulate and give a big hearty vote to Frank for having not only the mental energy to dig through all this stuff on behalf of everybody, every owner member, but also to have the courage to put it forth in a public forum. I think that takes a lot of guts. So thank you.
I'm humbled.
I doubt that. Now, on to my comments, and I'm kind of conflicted, and I hope this doesn't appear to be riding the fence on the issue. My going-in position is that all funds collected from member dues and activities, and the expenses that come in against those funds, all drop down to the bottom line, which is our reserve fund. All you got to do is look there to look at the health of the community. And over the last 5 years, it looks pretty good. I can't see where there has been an exorbitant amount of money collected that hasn't been spent or accounted for or held in reserve for some future benefits. The governing board has defined our reserve funds as between 40 and 100% of the fully funded balance. We're currently riding around a little below 50 plus or minus. I regard that as a Goldilocks position. It's neither too high nor too low. We've been able to absorb some hits. We've been able to absorb increases in the irrigation and deturfing project. I believe we've even pulled one of the future jobs up. We've hit conditions like the conditioning of the soil. There's unexpected things that can happen. It wouldn't take too many more unexpected things, including another market downturn, that could put us perilously close to that 40% minimum. I don't know what happens if we get to there or if we go below that, but I can't imagine anything good coming out of it. So my going in position is I'm conservative. I would rather err on the side of maintaining our services and keeping our assets up than run the risk of having to cut services, cut repair and maintenance on our building, hold back on new items that could benefit all of us. If there's a mistake to be made, that would be the lesser of the two. So I'm going in there. Now, having said all those things, I'm not in a position at this point to offer a final vote for a consensus of any type until I hear more facts. There are some presentations in this packet that I saw, and I'd like to hear them fully explained before we get too far down the road of judging. There's data there that would help us make more fact-based and near fact-based decisions. So that's my position right now, Dick. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Novello?
Also want to thank Frank, Mr. Bagnano, for bringing this to everyone's attention. I think it's really critical that we have full transparency, and that's something that everybody agrees with, from the chairman of not just the chairman of this committee, not just to Pete Finelli, to our general manager. Everybody wants transparency. We have to do more of this. So thank you for bringing it to the community's attention. The numbers were right there in front of us, but it wasn't, you made it nice and clear. So that being said, I think John summed up my position pretty similarly. I think every corporation, every organization that you see, and a lot of us as individuals are more cautious than we may normally be. So I would also err on the side of caution right now. Preserving those reserves, I think, is important. I also, like John was offering, I want to see more data. We need to make fact-based decisions, make those recommendations to our chairman here, to the governing board. Right now, I'm not sure what the right solution would be in terms of form. Do we make some sort of a rebate? I would like us to consider that opportunity toward the end of this fiscal year for sure. I do not believe right now. I don't want to sound like I'm riding the fence on this either. I don't think now is the right time to make this rebate. However, we need to hold on to this and look at it monthly, look at it very continuously, and hold on to this. I would personally recommend to the chairman that we make a decision to keep visibility on these numbers and make a recommendation toward the end of our fiscal year on what we do with the reserves. If they remain at this high level, we should consider that recommendation, in my view. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a question for Pete Finelli, and it has to do with our FFB right now and what we projected out to be in the next 2 to 3 years.
That's part of Cliff's presentation.
Okay,
so.
good. Thank you.
That's why I think we need to see the rest of this and then make a consideration.
Great.
Apologies.
So in that spirit, Cliff Swan is going to present some information for us that I think we'll find very interesting.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Thank you, committee, and thank you, community. I just had a quick, just kind of recap of, it's basically a combination of what Mr. Bagnado presented and the reserve study that was presented last BNF meeting. So this is a recreation of the net cash available transaction from Mr. Bagnado, and he's correct in his numbers. The numbers that are on this sheet are correct. So I just wanted to represent this in our format. So here it is. There's a couple of things that stand out on here. One, you've got the capital spend, and two, you have the cash flows from operations, and then three, you have the APF fees. Now, the investment income, when we're doing our reserve fund calculation, the investment income gains and losses, realized and unrealized, lie in the reserve account. So we don't calculate the net cash available this way because those transactions are changing in the actual reserve account. So there's no entry for those. And the entry that we create for the reserve fund is to determine what we either put into the reserve fund after the year or whether we pull out of the reserve fund depending on what our capital spend was and how much cash we have left over in our operating account. Can you advance my slide? Okay, so again, policy FI04 states that the operating cash flows is a direct component of our reserve fund calculation. So when we're looking at reserves, we have to not only look at the gains on those reserves when we're looking at our reserve fund balance, we also have to look at the market changes that happen within that reserve account. So if we're not omitting that, at the end of the day, for the year, it was a $150,000 increase in our reserve fund calculation. So as John stated earlier, it is all about the reserve fund for us, and it's all about that FFB percent and where we stand, and that determines how healthy we are. And we're going to talk about modeling here coming up next. And I'll show you what our thought process is when we model out, 5 years down the road and what we incorporate into that decision, what our assumptions are. Not sure why that happened, having some glitches here. But in terms of member dues, so, I spent some time investigating member dues in the bylaws. And regarding the setting of the member dues, it's mentioned 3 times in the bylaws. So the first mention of it is that the governing board is prohibited from approving a fee increase of more than 15% over prior year. The other two key important things to note about dues is that dues are established and presented by operations, by the GM, as part of the annual financial plan every year, the budget. So those recommendations are made and justified in the financial plan presentation, and then the board votes on them. And that's how dues are established for this community. So Dick, if you're okay, I'd like to dovetail this right into the modeling presentation if we can do that, unless there's any questions.
Yeah, before we do
that.
Any questions from the committee? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just great dialogue before, so kind of went through, the presentation. So yeah, there was a lot of great content there. Okay, so, financial modeling, when Pete and the accounting team and Terry and all of us sit down and we start planning, there's a big dartboard that we put. No, this is what we use. We don't just throw darts at the board to figure out, we don't do it on, we don't feel, we have a good feeling about this, so we're just going to slam a number up there. It's not how it's done. There's a lot of thought put into this, and a lot of it really is looking at what's happened in the past. So looking at historical numbers as well. So there is a lot of thought and a lot of intention in this, and so we're going to go through some of those things. So I keep saying this, but it really is all about the reserve fund. And in our reserve fund, when we determine how we're going to either fund that or pull funds out of it, we have to take our operating cash flows from our operations. Okay, we add to that our APF fees, and we deduct our capital spend. And whatever's left, we put it in the reserve fund. Or if we don't have enough to cover it, we pull from the reserve fund. Okay, that's how we determine what money comes and goes into our reserve fund. So let's look at our funding sources again. I presented this last time, but it's important to understand. This pie is all of our funding sources. They go to fund, these funding sources fund our operations and our capital. 45% of our total funding comes from our membership. 17% from APFs, 31% from golf. When we pay for the operations and we pay for the capital spend, the improvements that are done around here, whatever's left over goes into that reserve fund. And if we don't have enough money to pay for it, we pull money out of the reserve fund to cover it. That's how we calculate that. So why do we have reserve funds? First of all and foremost, they're policy mandated. And it's a smart thing to do, right? So the reserve funds are policy mandated. We want to avoid the letter, sending you a letter or knocking on your door and asking you for a special assessment to do some kind of repair that we didn't plan for. We don't want that to happen. And then we also want to maintain and preserve the facilities here and the property value of this investment. And that Gary talked about it earlier, that translates to your own house and your own property values. If we don't take care of what's here, it affects everything around us. And it's affected everything around us to this point. And we have beautiful amenities, and we have to take care of those. And we have to have a reserve fund to do that. So that, on the capital side, as I talked about earlier, so the capital spending is all based on reserve study. Okay, so we have this tremendous reserve study that Pete, when I look in his office, his head is just buried in his computer, and he's going through this, and Carl comes in, and Todd comes in, and everybody comes in, and they go through line by line on this thing. They really spend a ton of time on this because it really is the heartbeat of what our reserve fund is. So this reserve study has over 1,200 assets. Again, these aren't operation expenses. These are assets. Okay, so these are items that are over $5,000 and have at least a 5-year useful life. There's $98 million in replacement costs for those assets. $98 million worth of assets in this reserve study. The other thing we fund is our operations. So people and power, Bill says it all the time. 73% total of our overall operating expenses is attributable to power, utilities, and our people. Service industry. That's what we are. Might need to check the battery in this thing. So when we talk about people, we talk about full-time equivalents. So what are full-time equivalents? What are FTEs? Well, it's basically you take the total hours of your workforce, divide that by a work week, and that gives you an FTE. So you're not measuring just full-time employees, you're measuring all your employees and what an equivalent person would be. So it could be 2 part-time people at 20 hours per week. Those 2 part-time people make 1 FTE, all right? So if we look at our FTEs, in 2019, we had 310 FTEs for the year. In 2022, we had 285. That pinkish purple line at the top, that's the amenities and services that are provided. The services we were provided and the amenities that we provide in 2019 are the same as the amenities and services we provide now. So we're doing it with less people, okay? Now, 285 that's a very uncomfortable number for us. Again, Gary talked about it earlier. Some of the people here, they're wearing a lot of hats, and they're our best people. So yeah, we're trying to grow that to 291, but it's tough right now. So when we're talking about modeling, what we do is we basically model out, there's some assumptions that we make in our modeling, and we have to do that. They're based on what we've seen historically, and as Ann said earlier, it's our best guess, right, at the time that we make it. So what we do on the revenue side is we model out a 3% increase year over year. That's how we model our dues increases, all right? And then a 4% golf increase, which could be made up of just rounds, or it could be a dues increase, or however we get to that 4% increase, we build that into the modeling, and then 5% all others. So sports pavilion, guest fees, food and beverage, merchandise, those types of things. On the expense side, we go 3% on wages and benefits. I can tell you right now, that's for modeling purposes, okay? But that's what we do. We put 3% in the model for wages and benefits, and then 3.5% for all other expenses. And then on the capital side, 1,200 we average over time. I think it was 1,214 last time we checked, Pete, but we averaged 1,200 APF title transfers in this community yearly. So that's what we budget and model out. And then within that, we budgeted also a $200 APF increase year over year. And then for capital spend, the reserve tool that I talked about, that R&R number, and then we also put in our modeling an average 1.8 million in new capital spend a year. So what does that look like on the model? I don't want to get too much in the weeds on this because you guys will fall asleep and it's really boring. But what I'll tell you, a couple of things to key on in here is that operating cash inflow outflow at the top. That's cash flow from operations. That's when you take the golf courses, the membership dues, the sports pavilion, all the things that are done operationally around here. When you take that revenue and subtract those expenses, that's that line item right there. And that's what it's been from 2019 through 2022 and then projected through 28. And then the other key thing I want you to focus on is the capital spend and the APFs. All right? So we do that calculation for the reserve fund injection or draw, okay? And then at the bottom, that's our health, that FFB percent. How healthy are we? So policy mandates we have to be 40% healthy. Okay, that's what policy mandates. And based on our modeling, we're at the 46 to 44 to 48% range. We dip a little bit in 26, but come back strong on the modeling in 27 and 28. So again, don't want to mesmerize you with these numbers. Some people are really good with numbers, some people aren't. But a couple of things I want to point out here. In 2019, this is a waterfall chart of what our dues increases have been since 2019 and what's projected through 2028. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the fee increase in 2019 was a $20 increase to the community. I believe the dues went from $445 to $465. It was a 4.5% increase. Okay. The impact of that decision in fiscal year 2019 was $270,000. If you take that dues increase year over year, through this year, it'll be $2.5 million. Through 2028, it'll be $5.1 million. Okay, that's the impact of what happens when we put in place a dues increase. In 10 years from 2028, it'll be another $5.1 million, that one dues increase. In 2022, we implemented no increase coming off of COVID. All right, uncertainty. Good decision. But what's the impact of that zero dues increase till the end of time? It's zero. Okay, so we miss out on an opportunity if we do that. So just keep in mind, when there is a dues increase, it has an impact not just in the year you're in. In fact, it has the least impact in the year you're in. So let's we wanted, talking with Dick and Pete and I talking with Dick, he said, well, maybe we can, do some kind of what if analysis in your modeling. So we decided to do that. So we decided to eliminate the dues increases for 2023 and beyond in this what if modeling. We also decided to inject another $5 million in master plan initiative capital spending. So say, after master plan, we decide that, that we want to, renovate the library and put in a restaurant or whatever. Okay. 5 million over 5 years, which isn't over 5 years is not a lot of capital to spend on new capital. And then APF transactions, if they dipped to 1,100 per year, what would happen in the modeling? You'll see here that by fiscal year 25, in the modeling with those what-if assumptions, we drop below 40% of our FFB. And then it continues kind of a downward spiral from there. Now, that would never happen. We would make a decision right there. To John's point, I don't know what that decision would be, but we would make a decision. So, but I just want to show you the impact of not having dues increases, okay, what that does to the modeling. And this is how we have to, this is how we have to plan. So if we decided to keep those dues increases, so I decided to put another scenario in here. We keep the dues increases, we keep the APFs at $1,200 per year, but we still decide that there's $5 million in master plan initiatives that we're going to spend. Okay? What happens to the modeling then? By fiscal year 26, we're below 40%. So when we model this stuff out, these are the things that we have to pay attention to. We can't just say we had a good year and then forget about the future. We can't do that. We wouldn't be doing right by you as community members. We really wouldn't be. And so this is why we model the way we do. So I'll kick it back over to Dick for questions and comments.
I think that was very, very interesting. I think we should note that there is when we do these what if scenarios, that any of these numbers we could change, and we could kind of play with this. And We know when we start talking about APF transactions, you know, at 1,100 instead of 1,200, what that does. What if we really tank in the market? What if we're down to 1,000 or 900? You know, and what's the acceptable tolerance level for our AFP or APF, asset preservation fee? You know, we're at 4,200. So is 4,200 the number? Is it 4,500 before people start having reservations? So that's kind of the foggy things that we've got to consider. I would like to open this up for discussion. So Christine, would you like, do you have any comments about this?
I think it's helpful to go through some. They're just so, Cliff, once you started opening up the what ifs, I had a million questions. Well, what if this? And the point is, that's why we as a community hire you folks to present this information to us. I think it does illustrate that we have a big remit, you know, to everybody's comments. Even Frank had mentioned, I'm not going to put words in Frank's mouth. That would be really dangerous. But exactly, I'm in arm's reach. But no, seriously, it's hard to know exactly, you know, what to do in the future. This kind of information and modeling will really help us make some responsible decisions. So I appreciate the effort. There's just not enough information here. I have a million questions that popped up. What about this? And, you know, capital project spend. There are lots of buttons to push in order to keep our fully funded balance at a responsible level. But I think my point of view is that to dip below where we are today, to knowingly dip below this 50-ish percentage, it's just premature. So thanks for the modeling. Really appreciate getting a viewpoint from you folks in terms of what you're doing, how you're making these recommendations and decisions. And I think, again, the onus is on us. We're going to have a very difficult year. Chairman did try to tell me this when I volunteered to serve on the committee, to be prepared to spend some time. But I'm ready to spend some time and to dig in. So thanks for that. No other comments.
Mr. Bignato?
Yes, please. Thank you, Dick. Would it be possible to bring up the spreadsheet that was at the very beginning so people can refer back to it? I can tell you that I have a good feeling that I know what Donald Trump went through on his very first debate. Okay, so again, I'm going to keep it simple. I certainly didn't have time or energy to prepare PowerPoint slides. I understand completely that the science of budgeting is simply not exact. Sometimes it's like getting Jell-O in your fingers. You're trying to squeeze it, and it shoots out in every direction. I think that there's nothing wrong with going 10% over budget or 20% over budget, or maybe if you had a great year, you're 200% of budget. But in this case, they are 777.5%. 777.5% over budget. That is not just a great year, it's a phenomenal year. It's a huge windfall, okay? And those are the words that were coming from the rec center. That's not mine. I'm not saying that we should rebate all of that money back to the residents. I'm not even saying it's 50%, okay? As far as whether it's $80 or $8, it's none of our business what people do with any kind of a refund. I can tell you that I'm sure most everyone in this room was quite happy when your car insurance company gave you back a month worth of your premiums, and then we spent it on whatever we needed to spend it on. It's our business, it's our money. My issue here is that I think that it would only be right, and it would be a great gesture if we came up with some sort of a formula that gave residents even a modest amount as a show of goodwill. Thank you.
Mr. Hobart?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. I have a couple of questions to maybe clarify some things. It's possible that I'm going to play Stump the Stars with you here, and I apologize if that happens. Just shut it down, please. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
The assumption is spelled out quite clearly on the capital of $1.8 million of new capital.
Yes.
Great. That would, to me, if I do a simple subtraction of the 1.8 from the numbers you presented in the modeling, I could get an implicit amount of funds to be spent on R&R. Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with that subtraction made, I'm wondering if that number came from looking at the accounting records to see what reserve, or what assets, if you will, are fully depreciated and need to be repaired on that basis, or is it more of a general sort of, gee, we've kind of spent this much money in the past, and we know we got this job, we know we got that job, so let's plug it. Could you give us some insight onto that?
I would say it's a combination of both. We look historically at what our new capital spend is as well, and that's how we came up with that number. Historically, it's been around the $1.8 million range yearly.
Okay. Would the same apply for the implicit assumption that it's a plug number? I'd like some insight into the R&R.
No,
portion of that.
the R&R is right off the reserve study.
So that's as factual as we can make it based on numbers. It's not pie in the sky.
Comes right from it.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next question
And I
is,
would note,
oh,
you know, we're talking about risk. The 93 million that we exited out of fiscal year 22, as we apply new findings, it's already elevated by several million. The inflation rate of 8.1 or 8.7, depending on which one you hear, is probably the biggest risk. You know, we do put into our, you know, pulling all these things together, John. Your question was, what makes up the capital spend? Cliff answered that 1.8 million has been a 4, if not longer, run rate of what we spent for new items and for allowances. The reserve study takes FY22 end, or any given point in time, and says this was your fully funded balance as of that date. I think you was mentioned that we're revising it every single day, and every time there's an inflationary aspect put onto an HVAC unit, if you're buying an 8-ton unit at 8,300 right now, and your reserve study has, you know, 7,800 because inflation has bit, it doesn't just apply against the one you bought. You now have to factor in on all those other items. The modeling does project out inflationary aspect to it, but it's by industry standards 3%, and historically that's held up very well. You know, we had a 2.5% run rate for 5-6 years, from 2014 to 2021, when suddenly it's exploded. Probably, in my opinion, the biggest risk on this thing is if this inflation aspect sustains itself. All these costs that are factored to be spent into the future are modeled at 3%. But if that 93, 95 million goes up to 98 and 103 and 105, not because we're buying anything more, but just inflation's hitting, you're going to see those FFB percents plummet. And I just would hearken back to, I think Christine mentioned it, that, you know, there's a perceived safe zone to the policy, and I believe you are hearing it from other committee members that they want to stay in that zone and not just get up against it. So that is by far the biggest risk to the FFB.
Christine, were you going to make a statement about the capital before I move on to my other?
No, please move on, John, and then I'll come back at the end. It's one of the dangers of going first, so go ahead.
Okay. On the FTE chart, I'm wondering if you could give us some insights into how we've managed to maintain the services with the less headcount. And I'll lead with my chin on that. I've jotted down a couple comments. You know, one is overtime. Another would be on the backs of the people. And the last one is process changes. And
Yes.
there might be some others. Did we have too many people a few years ago? Just your insights. It's not a, it's not a trick question.
Yeah.
Just,
So,
we have a lot of people in the audience. We have a lot of people, I hope a lot of people at home viewing this. I think the more transparent we can be and the more we can educate our owner members on how our money is spent, the better off the whole community becomes.
well, next BNF will actually be presenting a presentation on labor. So you've kind of teased that a little bit. Thank you. But in addition to the factors that you said, there's also subcontract labor that we're using as well for things that we would have typically done cheaper in-house, that we just don't have the manpower to do, especially in the golf maintenance area.
Thank you. And I promise this is my last question for this round.
Okay.
If we go to the funding sources, there's a nice pie chart there that describes total funding sources for the community. I'm wondering if at some point in the future you could collect maybe the last 5 years, do an average, if you will, of the funding that drops into the reserve.
Sure.
Just the kind of the net of this funding
Absolutely.
into the reserves. I think it would be useful for everyone if they could see very easily, like a pie chart does.
Yeah.
Exactly how dependent we are on golf and how dependent we are on membership fees to fund our reserves and, if you will, our capital projects. It's not just that APF fee
That's correct.
that supports it. We've got an obligation as owner members. So.
Yeah, and that funding, that membership funding, is the only guaranteed source of income we have. It's not tied to consumer spending. It's not tied to things that are out of our control, like recession, inflation, and all these other things. So it's a very important component of our reserve fund, for sure. And just one quick comment, if I may, Dick, on the modeling. You'll see next year we've got an $11 million. We've got $11 million capital spend. We've got a $6.6 million irrigation project. We're not going to be. We're going to be drawing from our reserve fund. So are we then to do a major increase next year for membership dues to pay for that, based on the justification of either having money left over to add to the reserve fund or having to draw from the reserve fund? We're going to be drawing from our reserve fund 4 out of the next 5 years, actually including this year, 5 out of the next 6. So we can't just look at that net cash available in 1 year and make a determination that we're not going to, we're going to do a refund or reduce the fees. We can't look at it that way. We're going to have a $5 million deficit next year.
Dick, thank you for the time. I think I've exhausted the patience of everyone else.
John, if I may, part of what, I love that idea, and Dick, if I may, if there's a way for us to really review some of those sources that you were suggesting that Cliff had volunteered, I think that would really help us in terms of understanding, how have we done historically, what are the sources of some of that, and so that was number one, and I apologize as well, but Frank had mentioned, a nominal, right? So something perhaps we can consider, if you look at, we had looking at the spreadsheet that Cliff and Pete's entire team presented, the impact of our dues increase that was approved was very small this past year. That would be $1.8 million over time, that just, up through 28, not over the duration of time. Perhaps what if on that would be helpful, so that we can understand what's the impact to our reserve fund if we considered returning that impact, that increase back to our residents. It's a nominal return. I don't know if that would be substantive enough, but it's something that we could consider as a future what if you haven't already.
Yeah.
I would like to ask you, Cliff, if you go to your, the dues increase impact, I think it was the very first one where you showed in, I guess it was 20, that we had no increase at all. 22. So basically what you would put in there is a negative number. If we did any kind of a refund, we would have to put a negative number in there.
Yes,
So,
the impact of that over
yeah, the
time.
impact of that would be not positive, it'd be a steeper decline, you know. And I did some really quick math, and this means absolutely nothing other than it's an example. 18,000 residents times $80 is about $150,000. Is my math right? Does anybody really?
Well, the residence it's per member, so there's 27,000.
Yeah, but it's still,
Yeah.
probably in
27,000 members we have
so
here.
300,000 then. Yeah. 3 million, yeah. Got my decimal point wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens next year when it's
3 million.
yeah? And then
$3
what
million.
happens? What happens next year when it's negative?
Well, just 28,000. Well, I just arbitrarily did, you know, $80. You know. Yeah, we've got our decimal points are uncertain here.
The point I hope that we're trying to make is we've uncovered this, you know, this source, how we need to be responsible about what we do as owners, right? As well as future custodians. I hope that we're all thinking the same. I'm going to live here for the rest of my life. And I love Sun City West, and I'm here. I bought in because we're fiscally responsible, and also because this is going to be my home for the rest of my days. So I don't want to see any decrease in our services. I want to continue to invest as we've been talking about. However, some kind of a return, you know, I don't know whether that would be substantive enough, but we could look at what are the impacts of if we did not make the $12 increase, and do we return that? I don't know if that would be something that would be considered, you know, substantive enough, but I'm just throwing it out there. We could consider some what ifs on what's the number that would be responsible, what's the point at which it starts to get, I think we've already seen that based on what we've seen, we're getting very, very close to that 40% responsible number, but we could continue the what if analysis to Mr. Bagnato's point. Sorry to interrupt you guys.
Frank?
I think perhaps it would benefit everyone if we could see a spreadsheet or an analysis that Cliff prepares, because he certainly does a great job with it, that presented different scenarios. In other words, if we gave each resident $20, how would it affect the reserve fund? If we gave each resident $40, how would it affect the reserve fund? I recognize there was a $4.8 million paper write-down in the reserve fund, but the residents have absolutely no control over that. That's not their doing. And so I think that if we could see a what-if model that you gave the residents back something, and if it's truly horrendous, then we can't do it. But I think that we need to at least look a little bit further into it. The transfer of funds to the reserve fund from the fiscal year that just ended doesn't occur until December, and so we've got some time to continue talking about this. Back to you, Dick.
I guess I'm a little lost here. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to get, I'll just arbitrarily say $20 back to everybody? Is that what we're trying to do? You know, when we talk about fiscal responsibility, you know, I think we have a responsibility to look at the reserve fund that we have, instead of trying to give money to dive into that reserve fund and in essence make a refund of $20 or whatever the number is, you know, we're intentionally, deliberately dropping our percentage for our reserve fund. And we know it's already in, I wouldn't say, but well, as John said, it's in kind of that Goldilocks stage. It's not going to be, because we're dropping $6 million next year in irrigation. And we know that it's going to drop probably to 47% and maybe lower than that the following year. And that doesn't count taking money out to do any kind of a refund back to the homeowners. I don't know what we're trying to do here, you know, so I do encourage the discussion. And I think we can do these what-if scenarios. I'm just a little lost on what we're trying to do. What are we going to accomplish, you know, outside of dropping our reserve fund? Yeah.
My comment on that is, understand Frank would like to see a rebate to people. But for that to happen, that is going to have to come from our committee and go to the governing board. And before we have Cliff using his time doing these things, I think this needs to be a committee decision. I don't think it should come from one person if the rest of the committee is not going to support it, and then it would go to the governing board for final issues. So I think that's where we need to start if that is something that the committee wants to do. But I think we need to, I've got another question, because when I look at the cash flow estimate spreadsheet that Frank does, it looks like we are going to be awash with so much cash when we make the reserve transfer that we're going to need 18-wheelers to haul it. But yet I see what's really going to drop to the reserve fund is much less. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's there's the cash in the operating account.
Yes.
Okay. And then there's the investment account,
Yeah, and
the
the-
reserve fund account that has valuation change, gains and losses
Yes.
in it. So when we do the transfer, it's just to take the cash out of the operating account and put it in.
Uh-huh.
That
And-
number is 3.2 million.
Okay, but we're not going to be cashing in all our investments, and we all have
No.
seen how investments have gone up and investments have gone down.
That's correct.
So we don't really have quite as much cash as we think we might have.
There's a
There is- there is-
$150,000 change in the reserve fund from fiscal year
$150,000 change in
22
the reserve fund
to fiscal year
at the
21.
end of the year.
Yes.
And that's going to keep us in our right around 50%, knowing that we've got big expenses coming in the next few years with some of the mandates that we've got on irrigation. So, I mean, I think it sounds really nice. It sounded really nice when the government wanted to give everybody money. Not everybody needed the money, but I think we need to know that our committee wants to even have Cliff spend the time doing any of this and where we think we would go with it.
Yeah.
That's just my personal feeling.
Yeah, a quick calc though on those numbers. You could just take that spreadsheet that I showed with the fee impact, and then that's built right into the operating cash. So you just deduct it from that, and that'll remodel it to what it would be. So it'd be very simple. But yeah, we you know, that's, I think the whole point is we can't look at 1 year and make a decision on that. And I'll keep saying, next year we go,
And
we have to draw $5 million out of the reserve fund.
And if next year it's really bad and we have to increase the full 15% that we're allowed by bylaw to increase it, how are people going to like that? I don't think that's going to happen because I think we're
increase if we did that.
conservative enough.
Which we would never, and that's part of the reason why we model it out this way as well. We don't want special, and it's really, that's a special assessment if you do something like that. It's almost like a special assessment. So
That's-
that's why we model it out.
Those are the words
modestly.
we want to avoid.
Yeah.
Well, Ann, I think you're right. Let's go ahead. We've actually started the discussion for the committee. So do you have anything else to add?
No,
Before-
I think I
okay.
promised.
Okay,
plenty. Thank you.
Sharon, or Susan, excuse me.
I only have one thought on this, and that is, no one has talked about not giving a refund, however, looking forward and not raising the dues as much as has been done in these models. I think from a marketing standard, it's much business practice. It's always better to say, hey, we haven't raised our dues in X amount of years. We're managing with the funds we have, as opposed to, I know some of the scenarios that were discussed here, we drop the 5 million in refund only to find out at a future date we're making significant rate increases. That's my thought on this.
Okay.
And I know your models are probably set up that you just can go in and change a number here or there and it'll flow through all the years. So is it difficult to run these different scenarios?
Not too difficult, but I would
I mean,
say
it's work, I
yeah,
understand,
yeah, I would say it is modeling. So when we go to sit down to create the financial plan that'll be presented to this committee and all the other committees and to the community, we'll use, this is one component that we use.
Sure.
And then we obviously take a look at where we're at for the year. So those decisions, to make a decision now about that, it wouldn't, other than modeling it, we couldn't make one. So,
Okay, well,
but we could certainly factor into our decision-making process when we present a budget, what that would look like for next year.
okay, I guess for me to sum, my thought is we probably wouldn't want to do a refund now because of the uncertainty of the future. And if we are making excess money, you can each year decide whether or not it is necessary to raise the membership fees. Or if we have to, we use a smaller percentage. You hate to get into a situation where, what is it, the max 15%? You hate to get in a situation where you start raising these fees by that percentage, only because we weren't prudent in the past. That's my thought.
Mr. Bosak?
I need some aspirin. I wish you had had the slide up there that you showed us a couple meetings ago that had the inflation track and then the ski slope.
Yeah.
That is driving all of this. 2 years ago, our capital value was $70 million. Now it's 95. So the percentage goes down to the reserve. So it's a numbers game from that standpoint. Anybody in this room have a thought that the next 2 years inflation is going to go down? Of course not. So we're going to wind up in the same box, and we're going to have the same conversation, and most things are about timing. It's very, very poor timing to have this kind of conversation right now. What we're facing as a community is very, very, very challenging for the next year or 2 or 3. And there isn't anybody in this room that doesn't have a wish list of things that they would like to see done in this community. The master plan was just finished, the analysis, the team that was working on that. If you sat through the follow-up on that, boy, some of the things people want, trips to the moon. I mean, it's just, it's amazing how wild the ideas get about things this community should have. It's all has to be affordable. And if we don't continue on the track that we're on, we're not going to have money to pay for the things that you want and need, more importantly. So please, don't get caught up in this feel-good of $80 back. Like, matter of fact, you can keep my 160 from our household. I don't deserve it and don't want it. I want the community to stay as great as it is. And having this conversation is in my opinion, very, very poorly timed. I'll give you one more example. 3 years ago, when this Grandview project was presented to the Golf Committee, it was 2.1 million. Today it's 6.6 million. Pebblebrook was 1.9 million. Now it's 5 million. So those things are all being driven by outside forces that we can't control. The only thing we can control is conforming to the law, and that's what we have to do these projects for. So if we ever get in a box where we don't have an opportunity to say yes or no to the project, you got to be willing to accept the other side of a rebate. And you slip the word in your presentation, but it's what Grandview or Briarwood's going through right now, I'm understanding, assessment. And in my 21 years here, we've never come close to even thinking that we needed an assessment for something because we've always been an extremely well-run community, financially stable, and we're going to continue to do that. You've got the governing board as a watchdog over the operations, and between the two of them, we elect the governing board to ride herd over what happens on an operational side. Thank to God, we got all kinds of solid people doing their jobs on the operations side. It's about time we quit second-guessing them, start supporting them. Thanks.
Mr. Miller?
You know, that's hard to follow. You know, I spent some time working in the UK during my professional career, and they have a phrase there called value for money. It's how they look at how their government is spending the dollars from the taxpayer. And I like to think that the value for money that we receive here in Sun City West is pretty good. I bought my house here 4 years ago. I looked at 10 different retirement communities before I chose to settle here. The rec center fees for my wife and myself, obviously, it's about $1,000 a year. The other places that we looked at did not have the level of amenities that Sun City West does, and they were 3 to 4 times more expensive in terms of the rec center fees. So I really do think we get value for money, and I'm very concerned that we will not have the resources that we need to continue to provide that value for money. And I guess I look at it from a couple of different perspectives. For me, having, again, managed large organizations and managed budgets, frankly, which are larger than what Sun City West currently runs, I look at this and to me, it really seems like it is a question of timing. I look at what Susan commented about in juxtaposition of what happened last year. Okay, we had a windfall. That windfall just didn't happen just like that. It built over the course of the year. So my question becomes, you know, as we develop the budgets, what did we really understand about what our cash flow coming in was? And could we have course corrected if we needed to during that period of time? So, you know, many of you either attended or watched the last governing board meeting in May of last year. It was somewhat of a comical high drama, okay? I don't think we should have ever allowed ourselves to get into the position of making that kind of decision and having that kind of debate. Was it the day before it had to be approved? Okay, so I think the committee this year is going to do its best to work with the governing board to make sure that does not happen. You hear a lot of people, and I see letters to the editor in the newspaper that comes out and says, I never had an opportunity to comment or provide input. And I'll call BS on that, okay? I appreciate you folks sitting out here in the audience and whoever's watching on the YouTube channel today. You do have an opportunity to provide input, so please do that. Again, when I look at Frank's numbers, and I appreciate the fact that he put the time and effort into doing that. Again, what leaps out to me is, again, that timing issue, where, again, as things change over the course of the year, you know, is the budget planning process actually accommodating that input of data as it comes in? Are we coming back and say, oh, well, we were going to ask for this kind of increase, but maybe we really don't do that? Or is it just saying, well, we're just going to ask for that anyway? I don't know that. So that's one of the things, you know, we're going to have later in the meeting, we review some of our financial policy statements. So I drew the short straw this year, and next budget meeting, I get to present my thoughts on the budget planning process. And so I've already got questions on there about how things are done. So, you know, at the next meeting, again, I would encourage the public to come to the meeting and have your opportunity to provide input. Christine made the comment about transparency. It's all about transparency. Okay, so the more we have an opportunity to talk about this and how we make decisions on behalf of the community, or we don't make decisions, we make recommendations to the board makes the decisions. But the more we have an opportunity to talk about these things, provides that transparency that the community not only wants, but needs. So I'll stop with that.
Okay, we've had some very good discussion on Frank did a very nice job presenting, and we've had Pete and Cliff have done a very good job on doing some explanations and what if scenarios, but I think what's left on the table is, are we interested in pursuing any type of a refund for this year? I think that Susan captured very nicely what we will be doing, and I think that's just our own diligence for next year to look at whatever, expenses and revenue and all that, and to make informed decisions there. But I think right now, I think we need to question the committee is, do we want to pursue any type of a dues refund? And I'll start with you, David.
No.
Gary?
No.
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 Yes.
No. I would make a further motion, if I may. I don't know if
No,
it's,
not yet.
not yet?
Let's finish this. It's not a motion. We're just looking to get consensus. We don't have consensus. We have a majority opinion. So right now we won't pursue this at all. Now, that's not to say that we're not going to continue our diligence and to monitor our expenses and our revenue, and that, as Susan said, that we will be prudent in any of our recommendations for next year. Okay. So now, all right, Christine.
My only suggestion was sort of building off of, I also really like the way that Susan encapsulated this. I want us to make sure that we're looking at these numbers and that we don't assume that there will be an increase next year, right? We can look at this next year as we're approaching that budget cycle. That would be the time that we can rectify some of this. If everything continues to go swimmingly, fantastic. If we need it, it's there. So thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. We still have quite a bit on our agenda. So the next thing is the 5.02 softball improvements. Mr. Gary Hone.
Mr. Swin, glad to see you here on your vacation time. Chairman Rhodes, board, I'm the softball president, Craig Hone of the Sun City West Softball Club. When we got told that we had, as a CR7, we couldn't make a lot of money anymore, it was our position that we need some softball field improvements, and so that's why we submitted the CR13s. We have a good presentation for you to evaluate, and I'm going to defer to past president Dave Rigg. I call him BC. He's before Craig. Anyway, I have some personal issues, and I wanted him to brief all four committees the same way, and so that's why our committee decided to have him brief. So I'll introduce Dave Rigg. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning. Thanks to the Finance Committee for allowing us to do our presentation this morning. The softball club field improvements that we're going to talk about, we feel is going to propel us into the next decade. These are there four of the, I gotta remember, I gotta point that way. The four projects that we're looking at, and we've set them in priorities that we think are gonna have the most benefit for all of our club members, are the outfield fence with the artificial turf, updated bleachers, remodeling the clubhouse with a meeting room, and batting cages. The outfield fence and the artificial turf is probably the big project. We were informed that a project to replace the outfield fence at Liberty Field had been in the process, and at a later date, the club determined that it would be good to replace the grass in the outfield with artificial turf. It's in a similar manner that we have on the infield. Water concerns are increasing in Arizona, and this is a project that would give Sun City West a head start on current and future mandates by the federal government, state government, and Maricopa County. And this conversion will also be a benefit in regard to turf maintenance. And you can see the four no's that are listed. It talks about, no water, the no reseeding, no fertilizer, and the no mowing. The turf will require some maintenance in regard to vacuuming leaves and twigs, which is currently done in the infield, and this will involve a probable purchase of a larger vacuum that will also work up the compressed turf in the heavy traffic areas of the ball field. An additional benefit to the club will be more playing time and the fact that the maintenance personnel can be utilized in other locations of Sun City West that will help alleviate some of the problems of finding employees with maintenance backgrounds. Currently on Wednesdays, the field is closed for the maintenance. With artificial turf, the field could be scheduled as well from early September through the end of October. And those are the times that the field gets reseeding. Doing both projects together would also reduce the number of large pieces of equipment that would be driven either on the grass or the turf when the fence would be replaced, or at a later time the turf installed. So it would also reduce the amount of time that the field could not be used due to replacements of the fence at one time, and then again later put the turf in. So we think it would be a benefit to consolidate the two projects together. Our bleachers are about 25 years old, and they've really served the club well. The existing bleachers do have some sort of safety concerns that we've had, but we think that we can improve the use and access of our existing bleachers. Right now, use of the bleachers by handicapped individual is limited. They walk upstairs by holding the side rail on one side, but if they need to sit one or two seats inside, it's very difficult for them because you can't use your walker, and some of the crutches that they have or canes are a little bit difficult to jockey as well. And this proposal involves moving the bleachers on both the first and third base sides back farther, and it's closer to the walls. And this will enable us to have handicapped access from the parking lot and from the sidewalk. And there are areas dedicated for people with the wheelchairs, walkers, crutches, and they can either sit on their wheelchairs in that area, or we'd have special seating then for anybody that has difficulty in standing, and they don't have to move down to the lower aisles then. This is a picture of two pictures of that currently see up there right now. On occasion, we have people that have limited or restricted movement that will come to the ballpark with the intent of watching a ball game, but then they turn around because of their limited mobility into the bleachers. And as you can see from the two pictures, there are steps on one side of the bleachers, and then in the space between the front of the bleachers and the backstop fence, it's very limited. And when we have games and special events, the walkways on both sides, which is first base and third base, it can be pretty congested. And if somebody's sitting in the front row, you have a potential problem of somebody tripping over a foot. And if they're carrying food, they could drop their food on people sitting in the first two aisles. So that's a kind of a concern. Moving the bleachers back to the walls behind both first and third base will help eliminate some of that congestion. And this would also enable the club to work with independent living and medical assistance area facilities here in the community, that we could set up special times where if they want people to come and watch a ball game, they could do that because they'd have better access into those bleachers. We also have a number of current and past members of our club that can't play ball anymore, but they enjoy coming to watch the ball games. And if they have restricted mobility, they can also watch the games in a more comfortable manner as well. Another project that we've got is relates to the clubhouse. I'm going to put, okay, this is a picture here that'll show, you can see the stairs right there and right there. Now, the upper level there is the parking lot. And so if people want to come down the stairs, they can do that. But if they have problems with mobility and that, they have to walk all the way around in front of our third base stands, past the dugout, and go up a ramp, and then to go to use the, whoops, excuse me. I'm not very good at this. To go to the restrooms then. And so that causes a problem then for the individuals. And if they're over in the first base side, it's even a longer walk for them to have to get there. There's another reason for the request to modify the bleachers on Liberty Field. Access to the restrooms much easier for the handicapped then, so that if we have the bleachers back, then they're on the ground level, and then it's easier for them to get in. We do have another option that I don't have on the picture there, but there's another set of stairs that we could possibly make a ramp that's much closer for the people to use in the case of wheelchairs and that. Remodeling the clubhouse and the meeting room. The current meeting area and storage areas are too small for our current needs. The current meeting area upstairs can house about 6 people comfortably. The larger meeting area for 20 people is what we need, because we have a lot of different functions for planning and everything. We also store our league issued uniforms, sponsored jerseys, and cases of softball, and that's not adequate for us right now. And space is also used by the announcers, the scorekeepers, and during all the games in which we cannot have meetings up in that room then when they have games going on. This is a picture of the upper level of the clubhouse there. And you can see there's a table in the center, and you can see in the background where there's an announcer and scorekeeper that are working. And besides having meetings in the upper level, the room's used again for running the scoreboard, maintaining the score sheets, and for the game announcers. So again, when they have games going, we cannot have meetings at the same time. Games are played from late October until early September, and not including special events between October and April. We average about 25 games per week, and that's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays through Saturdays. And when the games aren't played, the room can accommodate only about 6 people at that time. When we prepare for our various league sessions, we have to schedule rooms through the rec center. The number of meetings average about 25 to 30 per year, and with the attendance of about 20 or more people per meeting. We can accommodate people that climb the stairs by meeting in the lower level, but there are no tables, and the chairs and space is even more limited down below. A couple of options that we've discussed. One is to expand the existing facility by building out 2 of the sidewalls, and so that would give us a little more floor space. And if this option is not feasible, another option is to build a new freestanding clubhouse beyond the outfield fence near an existing storage building that's a garage and it's not climate controlled. Rough draft of that proposed clubhouse was included with the documents, and that I think that Carl's probably got a copy of that now. Our fourth project that we're talking about is the batting cages. These cages could be located out beyond the outfield fence, and the cages would be located next to option B was if it worked out to have the freestanding clubhouse built. We currently have one batting cage. It can be used by one person at a time by hitting the ball off a tee, similar to what is used in the T-ball leagues for young kids. Club members, especially new members, haven't played slow pitch softball for 30 to 40 years. That's kind of the standard for us. And so, because of their working life. And so when they join our club, they have a strong desire to sharpen and improve their skills, especially in the area of batting. Hitting a ball off a stationary tee is good, but it doesn't help them to hit a moving ball. We do have practices at the field, but there are times when our club members can't attend those sessions. 2 batting cages are not only a revenue generator for Sun City West, but a source of improvement for their hitting skills. We currently have to go to D-Bats, which is located at Thunderbird and the 101, and that's about 20 to 30 minute drive. By having cages here in Sun City West, more club members and residents of Sun City West and beyond can enjoy using the cages. At D-Bats, you purchase a card similar to a credit card, and that allows you to hit about 15 balls per round, and the cost of the round is about $1.25, or the rate can be determined by the facility that owns the cages. The cages can be scheduled to be used throughout the day and early evenings. The cages include chain link walls and top, and then inside the chain link, there's heavy duty materials on the walls that use to deaden the sound of the balls when hit by a bat. They also extend the life of the player's bat, which costs sometimes anywhere from $100 to $400 because of that softer ball. So we are averaging about 350 members in our club, and this field has been around for about, I don't know, more than 25 years now. Okay. And so what this does is, like we said, it kind of propels us into the next decade. The changes allow added days a week to play, and there's no need to close for the 2 months for the reseeding. Now, for our 25 years, along with general managers, including Bill Schwind, and members of his team, they've been working on other options to move or purchase property so that we can set up a softball field that's more conducive to our needs. But so far, there hasn't been any luck because, number one, of the property available and then the prohibitive costs that we find. So this is why we feel that these projects will negate some of the need for the additional field and at least table consideration until property might be available. This is new to us because over the years for the Sun City West Softball Club, everything you see at that field has been funded primarily by the club itself, and it was done through fundraising and events and by contributions by club members. And so there was, with the change of philosophy with how we are operating now within Sun City West. This is why we're coming through, presenting, making our case to the various committees and for programs that we need to improve our club. We thank you for your consideration and time to listen to us. And if you have any questions.
Ann?
Yes,
No. No. No, excuse me, we don't, if you're going to be he's talking to the committee. Okay, we'll get to you. We'll get to you, but we want the committee to.
one of your first slides, you said the fence has been approved for replacement. Who approved that and when will that be done?
I was actually going to say the same thing, Ann. Yes, it's buried within the reserve study, but nowhere has that ever been presented for governing board approval. So.
Okay, I was gonna say I've not seen that and seen it on the capital list, so it's not, it will be today, okay, but it hasn't been approved. Okay, so that slide, I think, should be changed for other committees to see. It has not been approved for replacement.
Okay.
It's been requested for replacement. Thank you.
Do any of the other committee members? Yes, Gary?
Job well done. Just two quick questions. Carl, you're going to cover the numeric part of all this? Well, I mean, we got to have something to think about in terms of the dollars and cents, don't we?
Actually, I think just to kind of add on to Gary's, it was my understanding this was just an informational presentation today because there was no funding that's been presented, so we have really no idea other than just the idea that they want to have some change or they want to have renovations.
It looks, folks, that the item 5.03, thanks Frank for pointing the actual number out, it's coming up right when Carl comes up and talks to us about potential. So there's a number in there.
That's what I just asked.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's all I wanted to know, who was going to cover it.
Okay, any other questions? David?
So the handicap access, are we governed by American with Disabilities Act in regard to that? If so, I'm surprised that hasn't already been done.
If you would stay up to the to respond. Yeah. You're pretty popular. You did a really nice job on this, so we have questions for you.
Okay, the question was what?
I think Carl was going to try and answer that. Well, my question was, is you know, there's the law, American with Disabilities Act, that requires you to provide handicapped access. I'm surprised if that law applies to that situation that it hasn't already been done.
The majority of the use of the club there is accessible for handicap, but we just want to enhance and improve the capabilities to use our bleachers and that sort of thing for those that do have issues. It just makes life easier for them. Easier to watch the games, to go to the restrooms, or maneuver around the ball field when they're there.
Yeah, I guess my question really wasn't for the club, it was for Carl in terms of the facilities requirements, so.
The club brings up some value in their concerns about access as it stands today, but as it stands today, we are a ADA compliant facility. You know, does it have some long routes and things as such as that? Yes, that is the case, but we are compliant as far as county and our original build. So if we make modifications, things could change, and we would comply to those codes of Maricopa County and the code system, so.
Carl, will you also cover the savings with the turf reduction? Is that part of your presentation as well?
No, you're gonna hear the initial proposed budget today, and with a majority of it being in assumptions, because we have opportunities for the club's request to have some rebuttal as far as like value engineering, as opposed to the full request as it's been presented to me by the club over the last few months and we've discussed together. So you're gonna hear our assumptions in the budget today, and then have the next couple months to have the deliberation as a committees to narrow that down to a yes or a no.
Okay. John, do you have a?
But yeah, first, quickly, the kudos to the committee. It was a really nice job. And you're clearly an asset to the community, and a very visible one for selling the community to newcomers. Everything about it is good. I just have two little suggestions that as this goes forward, that you try to dollarize those first force savings, the water and so forth. I think it's a big hot button, and I think it'll make your presentation a little stronger. And then toward the end of the presentation, there was another savings that was listed, and the batting cage revenue source. And if you can dollarize those a little bit, everybody knows it's going to be an estimate, you know, but I think it'll make your presentation a little stronger. That's all. Other than that, great job.
Thank you. Like Craig said, we were probably given a little bit direction to stay away from dollars and cents at this point and keep it as informational. So,
yeah, just going forward.
But we can have that information. It's available. So,
Mr. Bernardo?
Thank you, Dick. Simple question first. What's wrong with the existing fence? The most I've come closest to it is driving by. So what's wrong with the fence?
So the fence is listed as one of our reserve study tool assets. That fence is old and it has been modified over the years to increase to the performance level of the club. So as the club has aged, the players have become much more powerful, and that fence went from a height that I am unaware of to a height of approximately 24 feet today, and it's in poor shape. It's rusting in places, and we feel that after discussions over the last few years with the club, that the performance level is approximately, if we're going to replace a fence, let's put it at 30 feet. If we're going to replace a fence, let's do it with the best planning for projects in general. So if there's another request here like artificial turf, let's have a discussion about timing it correctly and not doing things twice. So it's all about having this conversation over the next couple of months to determine, does the fence need to be replaced? Does the artificial turf need to be done as a project? And making the best determination. That is why we call it project planning process. So,
very good. Do we know, or can you come up with at some point in the near future? I recognize that the outfield is grass and it needs to be reseeded. Is that correct?
yes.
How much does it cost us annually to maintain the field in grass versus the cost of putting in artificial turf? And how long is the warranty on the turf? So those are things that I think that we need to look at. And then I don't know if this is relevant anymore because we've changed a lot of rules as far as the clubs contributing to some of their costs. But is the club prepared to cover any of the costs, particularly on the renovations, which seem to me to be wants and not necessarily needs? So those are my questions, and I don't expect that we'll get answers from them today, but it should become part of the discussion as we move forward. Thank you.
I think we're going to have to leave that question. I don't know that any of us can answer that with any degree of certainty. So I think it's a fair question, but if we could, Frank, I think we're just going to move beyond that, you know, so yeah, Carl.
I will say that the comments are always taken, so we will make an evaluation of that and report back to you in the near future.
Ms. Novello?
Yeah, most of my questions were already answered. A couple quickies. Are the softball club members, are we talking about Sun City West residents, or is it beyond that?
Are they what?
Are they Sun City West residents that are a part of the club, or does it include?
The Sun City West Softball Club are residents of Sun City. They have to be residents in good standing.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify, I know that there are a lot of other uses for the facility. I think most of the other questions were already answered. We just need to, as we go forward, look more at a fuller analysis. I just wanted to add my congrats to the powerful players. Continue to get well and get better, ladies and gentlemen in the club. That's a great idea. Me, I can't play, so kudos to you, but it is an asset to the community. Look forward to hearing more in the future.
Well, one comment on that is the age ranges of club members range from 50 years old to 93 years old. So the majority of them are in their 70s and 80s also.
Even in my teens, I couldn't hit. So unfortunately, I'm a fan.
We get those batting cages. We'll show you how to hit.
There you go. I'm looking forward to that. But first, we have to make sure it makes sense financially. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Brown?
I did have a question, though. I realize that all the members of the club are from Sun City West, but do we have anyone from outside of Sun City West playing on our field?
We have a reciprocating agreement with Sun City where we have the leagues.
Or do we pay to go over there?
What
or
happens?
What is the agreement?
I'll explain that. What happens is most of the leagues have two games. One game is played here at Liberty Field. The other game is played at the Sun Bowl over in Sun City. So it's a 50-50 type of thing. And then we have special tournaments or games that people can sign up for that participate. So it's open.
Now, I know we have a person in the audience that had a question, so if you have a question, if you could come to the microphone, please. And tell us your name and your rec number card, please.
Is this on?
Yep.
Yeah.
And if you would give us your name and your.
Well, I'd like to say, first of all, I'm offended by not saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody else is offended by, their groups, but we can't even say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag anymore. Other than that, I've been a softball buff all my life. I played slow pitch.
Excuse me, I need to know your name for the record.
It's Samuel J. Autry. I live on Domingo Lane here. I've been here almost 6 years.
And your rec number, please.
Pardon?
Your recreation card number, please. Like your number off your card, please. Sorry.
Well, I've never been to a meeting, and I've never gotten up here, so I might be a little out of line, and I apologize for that.
You're doing just fine.
Okay. I appreciate what you folks are doing. Really, I do. I really don't have it on me. I cleaned my wallet out. But I can give you my address.
That's fine. You wouldn't happen to have a spouse with you that knows a number?
What?
Do you have a spouse with you who knows a
Yes.
number? Because I can take your number and the spouse is either
Well,
one up or one down.
I got it right here if you
Oh,
want to.
perfect.
Just a second. I'm falling apart, folks. Okay. Stow card here. Yeah. Come on. I got a new phone. I just transferred everything over, and this is horrible.
Could we get that?
We'll do that after the meeting.
Can we get it later?
If you would be, please, if you would just go ahead, and then we'll get your number before you.
Okay, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Well, anyway, I've been a coach. I played. I coached college softball. I came down here with the intention to do lessons like I did. I had my own business, Top Zone LLC. And I've coached travel teams. I coached high school. Also, my last coaching job was at Clark College in Vancouver, Washington. And I moved down here because I hated the rain in Washington State. 66 years up there getting rusty was kind of a problem for me. But anyway, I brought all my equipment down here, and it's been sitting in my garage. I got a cage. I got pitching machines. I was going to put them on Marketplace just to get rid of it. And The feeder I have has never been used. And it has 18 balls. You click on a switch and it'll pitch to you. But anyway, I got my card here if you'd like to it, and I'd like to sit down with you guys. I played softball the first year I came here, but I'm too aggressive. I crashed and burned in my first game, didn't I, honey? And I had blood everywhere, and I said, is it really worth it? So I didn't play anymore. So I would be willing to help them out, you know, whatever I could. But my personal feeling is right now, my faith is in Jesus Christ, and I've renewed my faith here lately. And I think that we need to put the brakes on because we don't know what's going to happen. If you believe it's 8% inflation, I hate to tell you this, but the government never tells you the truth. I'm into finance too. So anyway, I'd love to help you folks out, and I appreciate what you guys are doing because it's a tough job.
Kenny's
We
got
can
a
thank-
card that he'll
Thank,
give you.
thank
Yeah.
you very much. And fortunately, you are in the presence of Sun City West softball royalty right now.
Yeah, I know.
And these are the folks that you would want to talk with. So
Yes.
thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah, I'll give them a card here. Thank you very much, everybody.
I'm off the hook now? Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, we've been at this for 2 hours and we still have a little bit of time to go. We're going to take a 5-minute bio break. Okay? I really appreciate your patience. We've lost a little bit of our audience, and but this is the hardcore here that's staying. So, and I'm hoping that for those of you at home watching this are just as excited as we are to be here to finish this out. So, we do have several items left on our agenda, and we don't want to rush through them. We'll be prompt, but you know, we're not going to just blow through things. So the next thing up on our agenda, oh wait, before I do that, I want to thank the softball group. I thought you did an excellent presentation. You know, it was very interesting, and we're going to take all of that under advisement. Okay, thank you. We do have our next item 5.03. It's capital projects. Manager Carl Wilhelm is going to do a presentation for us. So Carl?
Thank you, Chairman Rhodes. Thank you for having me today. So just a reminder that this particular BNF meeting is our first opportunity to hear the proposed capital list from all departments. It includes Club CR13 new requests. It includes new requests from others, whether it be community staff or governing board recommendations from the past. And my sheets on the screen today are going to be broken down into 3 sections. It's going to cover new, R&R, and our allowances. And like I said before, these are the proposed initial capital list. You'll have all the meetings of October and your meetings of November to have questions brought up for further analysis of any of these capital projects before you as a committee make a recommendation to the general manager and the governing board for this list to be implemented into the December 1st master capital list that gets given to the general manager by policy on December 1st. So if I can begin, I'd like to start off with the new CR13 capital item requests. They happen to go perfectly in alignment with our presenters today. So the softball club is the only club at this point in the season to request any new capital. If there's been any conversation of other clubs coming, they have declined at this point. So for this capital season, these will be the only CR13s that you'll be shown. We'll start off with the softball field clubhouse expansion. We have a $1 million capital budget line item for this. I'd like to just say that whether it's the clubhouse, the bleachers, the full field artificial turf, or the batting cages, the project planning process kind of has a two components to it. It's single year planning determined by the governing board or multi-year planning. There are aspects of these requests that could be facilitated in a simple one-year plan. But if there was traction on, proving, all aspects or the components, a multiple amount of these components, it's my opinion that it probably would take a multi-year planning process. The numbers that you are seeing for these 4 line items are assumptions. The club has done a really good job, not only giving their presentation the information that us staff needed to just put these line items here in front of you today, but they also came with their assumptions and did a lot of homework on their costing. I can give you that information in a little bit more detail on their CR13s. If you start off with the clubhouse expansion, the club initially thought that this project should cost somewhere in the areas of $230,000. I don't like giving a number here that squashes anybody's ideas of that $230,000, but based on the last couple of years of per square planning for buildings, we are well above that. And that is why at this point in the assumption range, we are plugging in $1 million. I have to also say that on the clubhouse expansion, they had a two-part conversation in their presentation, and that was for a form of remodeling of the existing clubhouse. That discussion can continue to happen. Planning can be done to facilitate some of their needs and requests to possibly remodel that clubhouse a bit to help them out. But the clubhouse itself structurally does not allow for an expansion of any means. That lower level, which is different than the upper levels design, after having architectural conversations, that clubhouse cannot be rebuilt. It would have to be literally taken down and re-engineered as a new clubhouse to facilitate the spatial request that the club has requested. They also mentioned that the clubhouse, if it can't be done in its present place and location, that could a 2,000 square foot clubhouse be built behind the field? Not a terrible request, but after doing my due diligence of looking at our infrastructure at Kuntz Recreation Center, I do not have a sewer system. Maricopa County would require bathroom requirements for a building such as that. I do not have currently the electrical infrastructure to support a building like that. So it is my suggestion as your capital project manager that this particular line item would have to have some substantial review, and maybe that this year's idea is if the committees want to recommend forward that planning be done, that we initiate planning dollars or a larger level of conversation. Where can a building go for the softball club? But just to wrap up this line item, I don't feel that the clubhouse can be renovated to meet their needs, and I don't feel at this point in time that a 2,000 square foot building can be built behind the field. Moving on to the next item, the bleacher area renovation. Again, the club has done a fantastic job in giving their presentation. It is an aged infrastructure area. The bleachers are old. The area is tight. There is adequate ADA compliance. It's not necessarily convenient, but the rec centers of Sun City West worked with the club in the years 2014 to 2016, and an actual full set of plans was created by our current architect. They are a beautiful set of plans. I do have them as a opportunity for you to see it by slide if you could put that up on the screen. So the Kuntz, if you can stay on the title for just a second. The Kuntz, keep coming down a little bit. Softball bleachers, canopy, Sun City West, and if I were to shrink that slide, you would see that these were a set of plans that could go to county in 2016. Next slide, please. You can see that the architect and engineers have gone through a full level grading and drainage plan for this project. The club made me aware of these set of plans. It was very beneficial in their request to be able to kind of facilitate and see if some of their ideas were doable. This homework has already been done. Next slide, please. I will say, in my opinion, that the ideas in this set of plan set and the ideas that came from the club previously, this facility, the redesign here is virtually on the level of almost having like a professional MLB spring training facility. It's beautiful. You know, if you go to the next slide, you'll see some more details that compensate for the ADA changes, the change of the bleacher locations, the idea of the third base bleacher line having ADA access from the parking lot sidewalk area right into the center section of bleachers. These things are all possible. The architect has already shown this on the plan set. But the conversation is greater than just the bleacher renovation. So I've had a few discussions with the club already. There is the opportunity here again in this proposed line item to do some value engineering, find the middle ground. It's up to our committees and eventually the governing board to determine that, would this be an approved plan as it sits on a set of plans that we have now? Or should we value engineer it to a place where we meet that middle ground and achieve everybody's goal, whether it be financially, the financial responsible side of it, or the ADA 100% compliant side of it from a renovation point of view. So again, I put these things up on the screen for you so that you can see what we're working with in this early stage of proposed budget timeline. So one more slide. Very nice. Very high level of engineering and construction components. Those are, this is a master change to what the club currently has and has already invested. The rec centers has already invested. The club has already invested in their own funds to put up canopies. So it's, again, my recommendation to you as your project manager that we can find the middle ground on this, and we can find bleacher supplying companies, manufacturers that meet the needs for the ADA request. We can change the area's current structures and elevations to possibly add different access points for ADA. Again, I think it just needs more time to have discussion, the appropriate dollars planned for this project to move this into a positive forward momentum. So right now, Pete, the CFO, and I have taken the middle ground approach. This is a multi-million-dollar project. We are plugging in $1 million as the conversation sits today. Otherwise, as the budget cycle goes on here with these committees, we can set a different dollar amount for the what-if scenario.
Carl, what's value engineering?
Value engineering is where you take all the components of the original design and find alternate means of either, cheaper products, maybe knocking off some of the components of the fancy roof structures, reutilizing what exists there, but yet still making the modifications. You're welcome. Okay, so moving on to their other request, the softball field, full field oh, go ahead.
Carl, I get the feeling like you weren't part of this original plan.
No, in fact, this happened finished 1 year before I arrived.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
So,
and it is a beautiful set of plans.
Yeah, it looks like it.
The work that was done with the architect, the club, and the rec centers at that time, this is fantastic.
Who paid for it?
Certainly the rec centers paid for it.
Do you have any idea how much?
No, I do not. Well, the investment in a set of plans and all the hard work, and probably what the club reimbursed the rec centers for was minimal, maybe I would have to guess in the $20,000 range. If $30,000, there you go. So.
And these are a couple $300,000 prints?
No, the investment to get it to print here generally takes anywhere from the $20,000 to $30,000 range.
Wow.
So when we project plan, that's a very important component in the 1-2 year cycle. In a 1 year cycle, I propose the large dollar amount like you see in the budget, proposed budget. When we go into a planning and design stage, then you might just be putting in the amount that I perceive that it would take us to get to this level of planning with all of the information known. And then the following budget, you would put in the larger amount for construction if approved.
Thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Dick, I have a question. I don't.
Wait, but if you'd come up so we can hear. Oh, I'm sorry. We can.
Yes. I was part of this discussion when we were doing this, and we had a guy made a model and everything. The club was going to pay for this. It was $310,000 at that point in 2014. But then the club decided to put in artificial turf in our infield, which we paid for. And so then our finances wouldn't allow us to do that as a club. So that's why we invested in the prints and then tabled it. And good to Carl's good diligence, he found them, because since then a couple of those people have passed away, and so we had to do that. That's where we sit.
Thank you.
Sir, before you step away, let me ask you one more question. How many members are in the softball club?
We averaged 350 for the last 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, the softball softball club's request for a softball field artificial turf. You heard the club's presentation. I have no argument with that. I believe the questions that were brought up at the table today of further analysis of what would the true savings be in, not having to have staff and machinery and time and closure all be taken into consideration for this. But the number of $450,000 is very accurate as far as what it would cost to do a full field artificial turf replacement in the year 2023, summer of 2023. So there is inflation taken in consideration in this. We have both together, myself and the club, worked very closely over the years with a vendor that did the original install of the artificial turf that exists today. Moving on to the next item, the softball field. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back that up. This is a perfect opportunity to talk about a line item that I'm going to say in the R&R. It is my recommendation that if the full field artificial turf is proven to be a benefit for the rec centers and the club, that this be timed at the same exact time that the conversation about approving the outfield fence replacement gets done. So I just put that plug in there as I talk about outfield fence replacement a little bit more later in this presentation. The last item that the club has brought to your attention today is the softball field batting cages. The club did their homework. They had a factor of about $35,000 to do this, based on the facts that I have told you that I do not have sufficient electric in that area. Increase in costs of vendors, inflation. I'm projecting this at $55,600. And after if we were to approve this and go to bid, you might see then the potential savings. But at this point, the budget has $55,600 being proposed to be placed for that project. Questions?
Yeah, quick one. Thanks, Carl. On the batting cages, this is just the build-out. It's not the maintenance or whatever we would need to do to, excuse me, I have to speak into the mic. Whatever we would need to do to maintain this going forward, or?
That is correct, and I'm going to say that there's always the assumption that we do have maintenance, just like when we put in the artificial turf every year, that there's a cleaning and a sprucing up of the artificial turf. I'm absolutely certain that the batting cages will have a yearly maintenance program, will have come with a associated cost. That has not been considered, because I have not met with the batting cage professionals yet.
Of course. I just wanted to make sure that we understood how early in the process we are here. Thank you.
Carl, I have another question.
Go ahead.
So your cost estimate for the batting cages has them located where?
Behind the outfield fence. Currently, we have a big swath of land left back there that isn't being used for technically anything else. Maricopa County and grading engineers will have some say on whether something can be built in that area due to grading and drainage purposes. But I think it's a positive area from a presentation perspective of where they want it. And it is really the only option as well.
Okay, I heard one of the softball club members talk about sound deadening material, and so the reason I was asking the question is, does anybody ask the people who would be in proximity how they would feel about having people whacking softballs in their backyard all the time?
It's a very good question, and I think that same question will probably come up during properties and other committees, but no, I do not believe anybody's voluntarily gone and talked to the neighbors.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Bignato?
Thank you, Dick. Question I have about the turf. It indicates full field artificial turf, so we're talking about the outfield as well as the infield?
Infield's already done.
Got it. So really, it's not full field, it's just the outfield.
It will be just the outfield, which will result.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Hobald?
Question. Carl, if I understood this right, and I need some clarity, I truly do. The last two, the softball, the artificial turf and the batting cages can they both stand alone, or can those two stand alone without the clubhouse and bleacher
Every project,
renovation, without running into each other?
every project could stand alone if need be. My recommendation is that if the artificial turf gets done, that it happens at the time that the fence replacement, which we are responsible to replace at some point in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Moving forward, in the other items of new, you will see that all the rest of the items are capital proposed from all departments of the rec centers. In most cases, I have an understanding of everybody's capital request. If there's any additional information that's needed in a department that I'm not familiar with, we will get you that information over the next meetings. But I'm going to read down this list. Golf course buildings, electrical, mechanical assessment for EV carts at a proposed cost of $93,100. What does that mean? It has been brought forward from the governing board to consider doing an electrical evaluation, a mechanical evaluation, and a structural evaluation of our golf course buildings to consider a transition to electric vehicle golf carts in the future. This is an all-encompassing dollar amount based on a spreadsheet that I created of the 14 buildings, the cost provided from our architect, our electrical engineer, and a mechanical engineer. If they were to evaluate all 14 buildings and give us documents back to make future a cost analysis to actually fulfill that change if we were to do it at all 14 buildings. So again, it's this is an all-inclusive dollar amount. This could be changed to only 7 buildings based on further conversations from all committees, but I'm giving you the full dollar amount in case we were to evaluate all 14 golf course buildings. That's 7 pro shops and 7 maintenance buildings.
Is that 93,000 per, or?
No,
that's
that is to evaluate all 14.
all of them?
Yep.
Excuse me, Carl, I have a question. Will that include getting some electric golf carts and evaluating them also?
That will not.
It will not.
No.
It's just evaluating the buildings for the infrastructure to have
Electrical
the
capability,
electrical.
yep.
Okay, thank you.
Staff is working on a larger conversation of all associated costs. If any point of fleet would be changed, but the key is what is the initial cost to just get the evaluation for EV capability. So, moving on, Kuntz Art Room HVAC duct replacement for $50,000. That room is just aged out in its existing ductwork. So $50K for changing out duct to new clean ductwork. Desert Trails Pro Shop storage area roof structure. Over at Desert Trails, they have 2 compounds that are enclosed with masonry walls. Originally, golf operations staff had requested that both areas get a roof, steel roof structure placed over those compounds. We have narrowed it down to just the non-garage side. You will see a slide and picture of that area later on as we proceed in the budget cycle. But today, they are asking for the space between the pro shop and the garage to get covered so that more of their materials and storage items can be stored outside, which they currently don't have room for. The other request was for the area outside the garage door for the potential of storing more carts, but we think that's best served to hold off until we do this electrical evaluation of golf areas. Moving on, at Beardsley, the Arts and Crafts Courtyard, we have, in this last year, built a new greenhouse. The club has done an amazing job of retrofitting their botanical garden. During that project, a tree fell and damaged the old planter box, if you will, that was in the back courtyard by Clay Club and the Agave Room. That planter box has been since removed, and due to all the beautifications in that area, the clubs in that area would like a nice shade structure placed in that courtyard area, and we are proposing that cost between concrete and shade structure to be $45,000. And that shade structure is 18 by 31. Moving on to pickup truck for R.H. Johnson, facility operations, 36,500. Desert Trails Pro Shop patio shade structure. Desert Trails Pro Shop Ops also asked for a shade structure to be provided identical to the shade structure that was completed a year and a half ago at Deer Valley. So off to the left of their front permanently covered patio, there's an open little courtyard, and they would like a fabric shade structure and concrete area to expand their area for golfers to come and relax when the game is over. And if you want to see an example of that, drive by Deer Valley. And this cost is based on those costs with some inflation factored in. Sports Pavilion, Lizard Acre Sound System. The Sports Pavilion manager, Barry Hardesty, has placed $21,000 for a new sound system. There is currently no sound system in that area other than portable speakers and receiver setup. R.H. Johnson Environmental Services Yard, storage cargo container. Staff, facility supervisor Jack Stroup has requested a cargo container. Today's cost is $8,000 for cargo container. Next year's cost, figuring inflation, I am placing $10,000 to be proposed into the budget. That is all your new capital requests.
I think we have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, Carl. I just wanted to stop you in this, since this is the end of the new. I think in light of all the conversation we've had today about spending and about dues and whatever, when we get down to the nitty-gritty with these, along with any cost savings that we might see with any of these, I would like to see how they would rate want versus need, because I think that's going to be very important for us in trying to decide how we spend our money.
I think that's a very good idea. Mr. Bergnato?
Thank you, Dick. I absolutely second what Ann just said. We do need to divide this into wants and needs. The question I have, and also what Ann brought up earlier, I seem to recall from the last golf committee meeting that the first thing that needed to be done as far as electric golf carts was to either procure a cart or find out from other courses that are running electric carts if our carts, if we buy a new cart, is it even going to make it around the course 2 times? In the wintertime, and I can speak from personal experience as a starter at one of the golf courses, when it's very busy in the winter, sometimes these carts, particularly at the smaller courses, have to be called on to go around twice during the course of a business day. And I don't recall getting much beyond that conversation at that golf committee meeting. And now I'm scratching my head and saying, how did we get to $93,100 when we don't even know if we want to go with electric carts?
I can tell you that there's a subgroup that's going to be doing a cost analysis of, pardon? Well, I've actually got David Miller on it. That's going to be doing a study of that. So, and I presume that 93,000 will be in concert with that study that's being done?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
again, proposed initial budget, so now you're seeing that if I don't place it in a budget, we won't have any dollar conversation about it at all.
Yeah.
So here it lies in the initial evaluation of what our proposed capital is for the year. It absolutely has to do with the fact that there's a special committee being formed. And also this is a directive from the governing board in the ending of last fiscal year's request to do some form of evaluation per building.
Thank you.
Yes, general manager saying yes.
One last, to belabor the point. Do we need, in your point of view, would we need to look at all 14 facilities to be able to make a good judgment of our needs? Are they that different from one facility to the other? Or could we do one facility or two and from that sample draw appropriate inferences? Just a question.
So I think it's too early to make that determination. This is just the opportunity to say this is the cost if we did do all 14. But as the special committee meets, I think what you're going to find based on staff's initial assessment of this conversation is that we probably would narrow it down. It would probably get narrowed down to key buildings for the purpose that if it wasn't just about finding out that, you know, how our electrical system and mechanical system for exhausting works, if we actually got to that place where we had to make some determination of also, can we house these vehicles? You know, where's the best location for a new structure? So that's being thought about as well in the big picture. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, Carl, one more question. Are we talking, okay, so we're gonna have electric vehicles to evaluate. Are we talking lead acid batteries, lithium? Lithium, okay.
Listening to the conversation online at the meetings, I never heard any conversation about the much bigger fleet that we have, the maintenance vehicles. I mean, golf carts are fine, but you got 20, 25 to a golf course, so maybe 130 for we have 120 where I spend the summer, and they're all electric, so we got a lot of history of usage and what the expense was. I talked to the general manager the other day, and we don't need to get into that today, but if you're going to do this somewhere down the road, the maintenance vehicles probably put more miles on them than the golf carts do. Just something to think about.
Yeah, I can't speak to the benefits or negatives of having an electrical maintenance fleet. I'm not aware of that at all. So I just know that at the forefront, it's been requested for golf carts to be evaluated in our infrastructure. So if that was the case, I would assume that this evaluation would answer some questions for our maintenance yards if we ever got to that place. So, okay, moving on to R&R. We propose that at R.H. Johnson, parking lot number 3, which is in front of the social hall between Fry's and the common drive of R.H. Johnson at the South Sports Pavilion entrance, be replaced next season. $978,500. This does take in consideration, as we did last year, for contingency for soil stabilization. It has clearly come to our attention because I'm in the middle of the project for parking lot number 2, that 100% of this year's lot 2 required stabilization. After tearing out the asphalt, it was found that basically Del Webb built this property on top of desert sand. It was probably very sound and stable at 40 years ago. Today it is not. So this dollar amount does take in consideration a contingency for soil stabilization. Moving on to Kuntz, softball field outfield fence replacement. Today's evaluation of cost, $648,901 to replace the outfield fence only up to a 30-foot level. That takes away any netting that allows the fence to be hung on the right engineered size posts and provides a brand-new finished fence. I recommend that this project be scheduled at the same time of any consideration for the artificial turf, if possible. Otherwise, take a look of how that fence sits in relevance to the off-site wall of the housing to the east and how close it is to the artificial turf. So if I have to do the fence, something's going to get disturbed to do that. So I'd like to plan for this to be done as a singular or two approved items at the same time.
And this is in addition to the 2.5 million.
That is correct. This is an asset that we own, exists at some point. All fencing, whether it be pickleball, tennis, would most likely have to be replaced at some point. And if we're having discussions on making improvements to the field today for other reasons, then this comes into play. It has met its useful life. Will it survive a couple more years? Absolutely.
Excuse me, that's my question, is I don't want to be forced into doing the turf until we know more about the advantages of that, just because we have to do the fence. So you're saying the fence could wait a year or two as we get more involved in the total discussion of the benefits of the turf and what that's going to cost us or save us or whatever.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Beardsley Arts and Crafts parking lot, Millinery
I had
Surface.
one more
Sorry.
quick one. I'm so sorry, Carl.
Go ahead.
How about, isn't there advertising already on that fence? And is that impacted?
There is advertising. I believe it's the recreation center's stance based on our new advertising policies that we will allow that advertising go to term, and then a discussion will be had on how it gets handled to reevaluate, if any, advertising would be placed on a new fence scenario. And I don't believe that we are interested in having advertising at this point.
It's a governing board decision, right? Okay. I was just curious what the impact is to the cost of the replacement of that. Thanks.
Okay, moving on. The Beardsley Arts and Crafts parking lot, Millinery Surface. Arts and Crafts parking lot has never been changed out, and this is the aquatics parking lot was done approximately 7 years ago. So we've maintained the Arts and Crafts one up to this point, and it is time for full replacement. This also takes in consideration some form of soil stabilization. Palm Ridge pickleball light fixtures convert to LED, courts 1 through 18. All of our rec centers has, over the last 5 years, had an energy conservation program, changing our existing different styles of light fixtures to the energy conserving LED fixtures. Yes, this comes at a cost, but we have seen the return of an investment through our utility bill changes. And LED outperforms our existing lighting, no matter what style it is, whether it's the interior building fluorescent lighting or the metal halide lighting that we have on our sports pavilion, our sports center areas. So we are currently in the process of finishing our last rec center, which is R.H. Johnson, of the conservation lighting change out to LED. That will be done this year. And Russ and I discussed that there were a couple areas that I had not taken consideration, and that was pickleball at Palm Ridge. They are on the metal halide system. Technically, Kuntz's tennis field is on an old metal halide system, and we have no idea of changing that at this point based on unknowns about the Kuntz tennis scenario. But we do have lawn bowling / the walking track around lawn bowling also on an old halide system, and we propose that in the future budget. So this is for the Palm Ridge pickleball courts, convert all lighting to LED fixtures. Sports pavilion bowling lanes, overlay replacement of 30 lanes. These lanes have met their useful life, and they are experiencing other technical issues. If you go to the bowling alley, you will see, starting from lanes 1 through 6, a pretty significant gapping in the current bowling lanes, and they are beveling, and it's affecting play. And the sports pavilion manager has worked with the CFO to place this R&R project in this year's budget for $278,226. R.H. Johnson pool deck resurface, rubber deck. This is a proposed project to replace the existing cool deck with the same decking material that's at Kuntz that was done a year and a half ago. Yes, R.H. Johnson is only 5 years old, approximately 6.5 years old technically. And the cool deck is failing on a continual basis. It's terribly stained from all the oils and suntan lotions and feet and whatnot. And facilities maintenance is plagued constantly with having to do repairs that don't do the aesthetics any justice. It just keeps us safe. So the cool deck does not get replaced as beautifully as it originally was when it was done brand new. So we are proposing that in this next budget that we remove that cool decking and put down the rubber deck that we have at Kuntz. And that is for $205,516. Grandview Pro Shop parking lot, mill and resurface. Another parking lot that has come due for full replacement. Trail Ridge also, Pro Shop parking lot, mill and resurface. Beardsley Cardio Equipment, Treadmill 6, Cross Trainers 4.
Carl, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Going back to the R.H. Johnson pool deck issue, how long will the pool need to be closed to complete that? Do you have any idea?
I do. It's a significant square footage. I don't have that square footage amount right now in front of me, but based on the conversations that I've had with the vendor that does this product, I would say that the pool would be probably closed for 3 weeks. If we did it in a daytime atmosphere, maybe a little less if we do it in the evenings based on the summer temperatures. I would not propose to do this during high season, so my window is very small. The budget would get approved July 1st, 2023, and I would have basically from July 1st to October 1st to fit this project in, if you will. And so I think the best month with avoiding as much monsoon season would be about September. And I do believe that we should plan for at least 3 weeks of closure.
Very good. The other question, since we had moved forward, as far as the mill and resurface in the Pro Shop parking lots, are you also anticipating needing soil stabilizer?
Yes, I do. I anticipate soil stabilization a little bit less in the Pro Shops. So far, I've had a factor of about 25%. Consistent in the ones that I've done so far, and that number is larger in our parking lots at the rec centers. So that's why those square footage amounts would be considered at a higher contingency. So I do have that factored into the cost that you see for the Pro Shops.
Thank you.
Carl, I have a question.
Yeah.
The Grandview Pro Shop parking lot, are we talking about the asphalt between the driving range and the buildings, or are we talking about the whole parking lot?
The whole entire parking lot up to the cart path entrance to the actual green turf on the course.
Okay, now, so the reason I asked the question was we're getting ready to start the renovation of Grandview next year. And my understanding was that we were going to use the Grandview parking lot as a staging area. So how do these two things mesh together?
Any project that I have planning for golf course facilities is a conversation with golf operations and maintenance. So the planning for this is an already determined time frame that works for Todd and any closures that we have by golf ops. So it's not an interruption to their plans based on what we've discussed together. So this does fit in the closure cycle of the Grandview Master Project.
Okay.
Moving on, we have Sports Pavilion bowling ball returns replacement. Also from the Sports Pavilion manager, Barry Hardesty, that when we do the overlay lanes replacement, that the ball returns get replaced for $108,948. R.H. Johnson Metal Shop roof tile replacement. I have all roofing on a spreadsheet for restoration cycles. This follows along with our cycle, so pull off the tile, replace the felt, get another 35 years out of that tile roof area, $51,500. R.H. Johnson bocce courts. Our existing artificial turf has met its useful life. Not only do we know that as staff, based on when it rains, we see all of the dead fibers that have broken off and get washed to the ends, but the club has been very vocal and asked that we make sure that this is at least a conversational priority with this budget. Kuntz Craft Rooms, 3, 4, and 5, chair replacement. This is a chair replacement put in by staff, $51,153. Kuntz Pool Heater replacement, $48,834. R.H. Johnson Metal Shop Roof Flat Restore. So this is the flat restorative process for our roofs at the metal shop. We have a brand new roof, obviously, on the new addition that we built. When we were on top of that roof, we saw the absolute level of condition that the metal shop flat roof was needed, and this was probably scheduled for a few years out, but it's best that if I'm going to do the tile roof, that we do the flat roof, and that whole entire facility has restored roofing. Beardsley Clay Club flooring replacement. We made a commitment with the club. The club paid for a brand new monitor station, turned out beautiful. They paid for 100% of that. In those areas that we removed the old monitor station, we have patches of their old flooring. It's a VCT. And we said that if we would do our best to put in a new flooring, because the other areas of their area is due in this budget cycle that we're discussing here. So I'm placing in $36,037 to have all 3 rooms of Clay Club done in an epoxy chip coat. Russ has placed with the CFO all HVAC units, R&R, throughout the facilities. We don't have very many this next season, $30,357. Sports Pavilion, Memos Cafe, it has been requested by the Sports Pavilion manager to replace the cabinets and countertop in their entry dining area. So if you look behind the bar top where you can sit and have breakfast, and you look at the conditions of their cabinets on the walls and on the base, they are due for replacement, $25,000. Sports Pavilion bowling area sound system. This area does have an existing sound system, and it's been requested to have that upgraded in this next season, $20,259. Beardsley requires a new auto scrubber, $14,059. An auto scrubber?
Yes, what is that?
Russ, specifically, do you know what the Beardsley auto scrubber? Flooring cleaning machine. R.H. Johnson lawn bowling, roof flat restore. Again, another one in the roofing programs, very small roof, $9,004. And then the Kuntz chemical controller replacement, $6,931. Moving on into the next section, this is our golf department's golf ops and golf maintenance R&R capital list. If we go through this and you need any additional questions, we will have that information for you at your next meeting. It has been requested that the golf maintenance equipment be, the quantity needed for golf maintenance equipment is $1,389,235. Golf maintenance vehicles, the amount needed is $275,161. Golf courts, a replacement of 20 carts for $123,600. Grandview Golf Course cart path slurry seal, $67,531. The landscaping department mower bank toro machine, $39,243. Landscaping department pickup truck, $37,097. Grandview Golf Course, Lake Aeration, number 6 and 8, $23,881. Trail Ridge Golf Picker, club car carry-all with a cage is $13,506. Desert Trails Golf Cart Utility Hauler, $9,454. Echo Mesa has a golf course lake aeration need on number 1 and 8 for $6,956. And that concludes the R&R portion of our proposed capital budget for FY 23-24.
Question, Dick? Carl, on the R&R side, you've got the bowling area sound system for $20,000, and then the Blizzard Acres sound system. Is that the same person doing the same job, two different projects? I know one's new and one's the replacement, but
Honestly, I can't answer who the vendor is. That would be hired by the sports pavilion manager, and he's done his homework on that, if you will.
Okay.
I'm assuming that is the same vendor.
yeah, I would hope.
One doing brand new in the Lizard Acres and one doing the replacement in the other areas.
I have another question. Another year's gone by, and I don't see any funds at all allocated to fix the pond at adjacent to number 18 T box at Grandview. What I don't understand is this is a main entrance to the community. It's an opportunity for Sun City West to put its best foot forward, and what we actually have is the creature from the Black Lagoon. It's not a very pretty picture when one drives by, and given that it's a showpiece, or it should be a showpiece for the community, is there any plan in place to stabilize the banks of that pond and clean it up?
I will take your comments into consideration and share with staff, and we'll get back to you with an answer. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
Mr.
R&R?
Hobalt?
I have a question. And I think if it's just my individual hang-ups, we can just dismiss it. But I would like to see where there's significant savings associated with the job. I'd love to see that added to the job, a 5-year saving estimate, a 1-year, whatever. My example would be the LED lighting. The LED lighting, pickleball light fixtures, for instance. There'll be some savings on that, as we've had, and it would maybe put some of these jobs a little more accurately in terms of total expense for everybody. That is just an idea, but if others don't agree that it's necessary, I'll be quiet.
John, that's not hard to do. So I've had to provide that in the past for some of the other line items of the areas we did, like mini golf. So the comparative cost difference between what a metal halide runs and what an LED produces or requires an electric, that's one area. It's a little harder to get the actual utilities savings because it's bulked up in the whole rec center's meters. But I think you'll see the significant ROI when you just see what a metal halide costs to operate and to replace, which is the key too, because Russ and them, they replace them all the time, okay? And that's not the case with the LED. And then what LED is generally a 40% reduction in electric.
Those things that save us money, in my mind, get a little higher priority.
Absolutely. Christine?
Yeah, sort of building on what John just said, my suggestion is that rather than doing that level of analysis for every single tiny line item, focus on those big things, if you wouldn't mind. Bring to our attention, what are the trade-offs, some of these really big line items. I had my phone out not to make calls, but to using it as a calculator, and I should have done it ahead of time, my apologies. But nonetheless, some of the big things like, wow, what can we expect to see? Some of these things must have, what's a nice to have, and where can we see maybe a little revenue uplift, anything like that on the big things. My suggestion anyway, John, is that, focus on some of the bigger things. We don't want you to have to dive into that at all levels of minutia. We trust that you've done your work and your due diligence, and you're bringing to our attention the things that really need to be here, in my view anyway.
I'd like to just make a comment off of that, and I'd be happy to provide an additional level of information for these items. These are the R&R line items. They have a certain level of requirement to be repaired and replaced. So And some of these don't have a factor of ROI. It's, you know, I hate to say it, it's just an expense, you know, the asphalt are some of your largest dollars that I'm requesting to be considered in the budget, and what is the ROI on that, you know what I mean, other than, so I will take that into consideration and see what level.
Sometimes there isn't, but if there is a little something, those, you know, you can help us prioritize, you know, things that are, thank you very much.
As we get down the road here too, into the next sessions of budget, proposed budget list, you're gonna see photos. So this is the initial. This is to kind of get you to have a good month to think about it and chew on it. And then the next level, we start adding photos and more information as you come up with these questions. So the last section is allowance. Our allowances are the unexpected items throughout our rec centers that just pop up, and we either need to replace, repair, fix. So you have approximately 7 allowance categories this year: safety and structural integrity, well pump replacement, unexpected facility improvements, equipment, information technology, energy conservation, ADA compliance upgrades. I do believe this is the same exact list from last year's capital request, and the total for allowances for this year is $400,000 being requested. And that would be the end of my presentation.
Anybody have any final questions for Carl? Carl, I want to tell you how much we appreciate the diligence, the time, the level of effort that you put into this. It's very obvious that this is something that you take very seriously, and we want to thank you for all your fine work with it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me today.
So in the interest of ending a marathon session, we've been here for 3 hours. I was told many years ago that your mind will accept what your rear will tolerate, and I think we have met that point. So there are still 3 items on the agenda. We are not going to address them. There are 3 policy reviews, so we will defer them, maybe not to, we'll defer them to a point in the future. Okay, so at that, and I do thank John Hobald and Susan Redmond, because they have done advanced work on the 3 policies that we're going to defer. So I'm going to ask for comments from our committee. Do we have any comments? Start with you, David. No? Gary?
Carl, I think you maybe sense the trepidation we all have about this softball project. The number kind of blows me away, so I appreciate your offer and need to get into the architecturals and do your value judgments, and whatever you come up with, I'm sure we'll have great confidence in, but really surprised that the number now is like $3.7 million, $3.6 million. So, and the last thing was, I wish all the initial attendees would have stayed for the rest of the meeting, because they would have seen your work and they'd have said, okay, I understand where all that money comes from now to do all the stuff that I want. Thanks.
Ann? Oh, I'm sorry, Susan.
The only thing I'd like to say is I would like to thank the staff, the excellent job they have done preparing all of these schedules for our review. I know it's a lot of work that goes into it, and thank you.
Ann?
I echo what Susan said about our staff, and I also think we've got a great committee this year. I like all the viewpoints we're getting, all the input, and I'm really pleased to serve on this committee.
John?
I'm very pleased with the very rich discussion that took place this morning. It is not atypical for this committee. I think it's healthy, and I think the more transparent we can be going forward in each and every aspect of this committee, the better served the community will be.
Frank?
Sometimes I even have nothing to say.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to be serving on the committee. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm very happy to be part of it, and really wanted to echo everybody else's sentiments to the staff of the rec centers. fantastic work, and the level, Carl, that you could dive into every level of these projects to answer every single question. I'm really impressed. Really, not just with Carl, but with everybody. So thanks.
I do have comments as well. I am just really pleased with the level of professional discussion and the ability to present your points and the professionalism that we've shown each other. And I think that's very refreshing, and I think it's something that we should be very proud of. So I thank all of our committee members for that. I do want to open it up to those of you that are remaining in the audience here. You are our VIPs, and so we ask if you have comments, we would welcome them at this point. And if you would give us your name and your rec number, please.
Hi, my name is Marty Konopko. Rec number is 135800. And just a quick comment. I was doing some end-of-life planning and realized, talking to people, that if I change the ownership of my home and put it into a trust, I'm going to have to pay an asset preservation fee. Oh, then thank you very much.
Yeah, I
think
think
we might clarify that as long as the same owners are on. I mean, if it's husband and wife are on the deed, husband and wife are the trust, as long as you're not adding more people to the trust.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify that.
My name is Ed Van Cott, 122253. The fact that you have not discussed the investment program of reserves creates more doubt in my mind as to what's going on. I would think you ought to at least tell us what is happening in these reserve fund investments. Thank you.
your timing is very good with that, because at our next Budget and Finance Committee meeting, we're going to have a presentation on exactly that item, and it'll be done by our professional managers. Okay. Thank you, sir.
I'm Craig Hone again, 623-608. Just to answer a couple of questions. Our club, with respect to advertising around the fence, we were able to make a lot of money for a lot of years. And we paid for existing on the artificial turf. We paid $150,000 from our club to put the artificial turf on the infield. We paid $125,000 to replace it in 2019. And we paid $80,000 to do the warning tracks, all that club expense. And with the advertising around that you ask about, we've been restricted that we cannot do that anymore, even though we think it looks like a professional field. With respect to the artificial turf in the outfield, we've done our due diligence too, and we figured that it'll be a 7-year payoff with the savings for the things that we briefed. To your question, Gary, and with proper maintenance, it'll last about 10 years. I'm not sure about the warranty. Carl knows more about that than I do, for sure. And then with respect to polling the people around our field, there was one time in 2019, they were considering lights, so we'd have more playing time. We did our due diligence with that too. We polled the people, and they like the field as long as it doesn't interfere late at night when they're trying to sleep. But I think we have good support around our field for our softball and what we do. And so I just answered some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Our next meeting is October the 18th. At 9 a.m. in this room. We will have Camp Trust that will be here to discuss our investments. And I would invite all of you to participate. We keep talking about transparency. We're serious about this. We're very serious. We want you to know, and we want you to ask. So at that, it is 12:07. This was 3 hours and 7 minutes. So the meeting is adjourned.